The Constitution. Do we still have one? I'm Maya May, and tonight on Punching Up at our brand new time, 5 p.m. Eastern, we're talking community, cake, the Constitution with journalist A.J. Jacobs. He's the best-selling author of The Year of Living Constitutionally. And at a time when the administration is trying to rewrite the Constitution in real time, I think we need to consult with him. We might need to have an orientation for everybody. Maybe everyone needs to live a year constitutionally. But we're going to find out from AJ Jacobs. So come on into the show.
Oh, thank you, Maya. It is a
Welcome.
delight to be here. We have a lot to talk about, as you mentioned.
We sure do. Now, a year, is the hat part of the year living constitutionally? Did you decide to continue it? Tell me more.
Yes, I'm more just wearing this for you. But the idea of the book was to try to understand our Constitution by getting into the mindset and living using the technology of our founding fathers. So that meant the tricorne hat. It meant reading hundreds of books of the 1700s. I carried a musket because that's what the Second Amendment meant. I wrote by candlelight, as you mentioned earlier. I wrote with a quill pen. I quartered some soldiers. And it was all to try to figure out, what does the Constitution mean? What did it mean then? And what should it mean now? And as you mentioned, this book came out a year ago, but unfortunately, it is more timely than ever because our Constitution, as you said, I've never seen so many crises at once, so many constitutional crises. It's extraordinary.
Bad. No, it's really bad. Like, I'm like, honey, give me a copy of the Constitution. I need to have it on me at all times because I'm like, what are we even doing? But before we really get into it, I want to talk about the most important part of your book to me, which is cake. Cake in community. Can you talk about how integral cake was?
I love that you've and by the way, I love the video you made about rage baking. And this was so you were not the first to do rage baking, or at least democracy baking. Back in when our country started, voting was something completely new. Just the idea of being able to choose your own leader. Now, granted, big asterisk, it was only part of the country that was allowed to, white men, but it still was a step towards democracy. And it wasn't a chore to vote. It wasn't like, it was a thrill. And so it was a celebration. And they had parades, they had music. It was almost like, I don't know, now Coachella. It was like Coachella. And they had cakes. People would make these huge cakes, sometimes 70 pounds. So as part of my project, I decided to try to revive that idea of democracy cakes, election cakes. And I got hundreds of people across the country to bake these election cakes. Now, I don't think a cake is going to solve everything, as much as I wish it did, but it's I call it a sort of a gateway carb. It's get people thinking about democracy, get them excited, and then we can fight real battles like gerrymandering and voter suppression and all of these. But let's remind people this is an amazing right.
Yeah, I mean, it should be this way, right? Like, it should be celebratory, the fact that we get to choose who leads us. And so to me, the idea of cake being involved is like, obviously we should have cake. Obviously it should be a celebration. It seems like we like to celebrate on the 4th of July, but we don't like to actually do the work and then celebrate. So I'm first order of business, y'all, is cake has got to make a comeback. I'm going to say that.
Yeah, come bake with us on election day. We do it. And by the way, Australia has they have democracy sausage. They went the barbecue route, and they have a day off. Election day is a day off, and it's a big celebration. And I think there's something to that.
All right. I was gonna say they do that in Argentina as well. Like serving choripan is like part of election day. So food is what we're saying, people. We need food. We need it to be a party because things are dire right now.
Yes,
They're
agree.
so dire that Kristi Noem, who should know a little bit about our rights so that she can, make sure she's not violating them, doesn't even know what habeas corpus is. I don't know. Have you seen this clip? Let's roll a clip, Sam.
Citizens and hold them indefinitely for no. So, Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right
let me stop you, ma'am. Habeas corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President
habeas
Lincoln
corpus,
used it.
Excuse me. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea. As a senator from the live free or die state, this matters a lot to me and my constituents and to all Americans. So,
Having lived a year constitutionally, are you horrified by what you're seeing? What's it like?
I am gobsmacked. I mean, it is bizarro world. That was the exact opposite of the definition of habeas corpus. And the fact that she said that it was the president's right reveals the problem with this current administration's view of the Constitution, because they see the Constitution as the president can do whatever he wants, which is exactly the opposite of what the Constitution is there for. The Constitution has problems. It had some elitist elements. It was racist. It was sexist when it was first written. But one of the things that is wonderful about it is that it did provide checks. They tried to provide checks and balances so that you didn't have a tyrant. They just finished fighting the Revolutionary War. Thousands died. They hated tyrants. They hated monarchy. And they did everything they could to get rid of it. Now, I think they made a mistake when they set up the presidency. And several of the delegates at the Constitutional Convention, when the idea of a single president came up, several of them said, wait, are you jesting? This is a terrible idea. We just fought a war to get rid of a king. One of the delegates called a single president a fetus of monarchy. The fetus, you're gonna create a baby king, and he's gonna grow and grow. And they were right.
I was going to say that we literally have that in the White House now, a toddler king, a baby king. I don't know how you want to call him, but
exactly. Well, I think emotionally he's a baby, but power-wise, he's quite an adult. And it's a huge problem. So there were some of the delegates I talk about in my book wanted more than three presidents, 12 presidents. Switzerland, by the way, has 7 presidents. And the idea was you cannot give that much power to one person. And Congress was supposed to be the number. They were first among equals. Congress is where the people's power should lie. So we are in a dire, as you say, dire situation where they are totally ignoring the spirit of the Constitution and this idea of checks and balances and Congress being the representation of the people. And we're like on the verge of King George III again.
So you have a petition that you talk about in your book because there's been 27 amendments. You wanted to petition for the 28th. Can you talk about what that process was like? And maybe we all should be petitioning for something right now. Maybe no president.
Well, that's it. I wrote a petition, and it was sort of at the time tongue in cheek that we should have to go back to the Ben Franklin's idea of 3 presidents. Because even under Biden, even under the Democrats, presidents were way too powerful. It's the imperial presidency. It's been supercharged now the last few months, but it's been a problem for decades. So I was like, maybe let's consider 3 presidents. Why not? Maybe it's better. Now I've gone the other way. I think I agree with you, Maya. that maybe we should have 0 presidents, just have Congress, because it really is a problem to have one person have all that power. It's authoritarian, and it doesn't work. Even if you have someone, this should be a bipartisan issue, because if the Democrats get in and one Democrat has all that power, then it's a disaster as well. But right now, I mean, we are in, as you say, just the worst.
Let's say, I need a break from presidents is basically
yes,
like,
yes.
we could just put it on pause for a minute.
Oh, it is just a disaster. So yes, I for the book, as one of my adventures, I went around with this petition, and I had a quill pen, and I actually got a meeting with a Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon, and he was great. I mean, I went in there looking like this. I had the whole outfit on. He could have thrown me out. He said he wasn't sure about 3 presidents, but he agreed with the basic idea that Congress has given up way too much power. And just look at tariffs. The Constitution says that it is Congress that should be doing tariffs. Why is Trump able to control this? It's insane. Same with the war. The powers of war. Congress is the one that's supposed to declare war, and the president executes it. So it's just insane. So I went in there, and as I say, he agreed with the premise of that the president has too much power, if not the solution.
So we're in a constitutional crisis, but the document itself can be interpreted in many ways. You call it a Rorschach test. Can you talk about the different ways that people have been interpreting it, and how it can harm or how it can help?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do think the strength and the weakness of the Constitution is that it is pretty vague. So when it says due process, it doesn't spell out many of it's one of the shortest constitutions. I think Monaco is shorter, but every other constitution is longer and more detailed, and they spell it out. So the advantage of being vague is that we can evolve it. The disadvantage is that we can twist it and turn it into what we want. And I think it's been a battle since the beginning of these 2 conceptions of the Constitution. One, on the one hand, the Constitution is the big bang of democracy, this amazing step forward. On the other hand, it also has oligarchic tendencies, elitist tendencies, racist, sexist tendencies. So it's a battle, and you can view it either way. One of my heroes, Frederick Douglass, has argued that we have to look at it as a promissory note, almost it's aspirational, because before the Civil War, of course, he was saying it promises freedom. It talks about liberty and equality. And look at it. Well, of course, this is ridiculous. We don't have that. But it's aspirational. It's a promissory note that we have to live up to the ideals of the founding fathers, even if they didn't live up to them themselves. And that framing I find very inspiring. It's the same framing Martin Luther King had. He talked about promissory notes in his great speeches. Obama talked about it. And so I am a big fan of seeing that. And my idea is let's look at the spirit of the Constitution, and the looking on the positive side. And that is about making a society where there is equal opportunity for everyone, and there's due process, and no one is above the law. And that's what we have to get back to. We don't want to, A, twist the Constitution so that it's some sort of authoritarian blank check, or B, we don't want to be so stuck in the past that we are trying to take away women's rights because abortion is not mentioned in the Constitution. So those are that's to me is how we need to view the Constitution, as somewhat flexible, but still a bulwark against authoritarianism.
So it's not just a suggestion, which it feels like the Republican Party right now is approaching it more as a suggestion, something that they can throw out if it doesn't suit their needs. And I was reading something super concerning that the people who brought you Project 2025, Heritage Foundation, ALEC, are also hoping to perhaps have another constitutional convention. What would it take? Is this possible? What would can this happen? Can they just throw it all out and start over again and just decide to, nobody who got rights in those amendments gets rights now?
Well, that is built into the Constitution, that you can create a new constitution. And actually, most countries have had many, many constitutions. There's been movements for decades on both the left and the right to totally reboot the Constitution. Let's do a whole new Constitution. On the left, you have people saying that there are elements of the Constitution that are so anti-democratic, we got to get rid of it. Like the Senate, the fact that Wyoming has the same number of senators as California. That is so outrageous. And we've just got to chuck the Constitution and start again and create a better system. On the right, you've got a movement that the state rights, at least before Trump, they decided that he was good to be the king. They believed that the Constitution does not give enough power to states, and that we need a new Constitution that makes it clear states are what the founders wanted to have. The power should be in the states, not in the federal government. To me, and the dozens of scholars I talked to, the dangers of doing a new constitution outweigh the benefits, because we don't know what'll come out. We could come out with something better, but as you say, we could come out with something far, far worse, and we could get rid of all of those rights that are in the Bill of Rights and the amendments, and that would be, of course, a disaster.
Yeah, so better the Constitution we know than the Constitution we don't know. I don't
that.
I don't want to have to flee. And that being said, this administration is acting as if it doesn't exist. Pete Hegseth recently, I think it was today, we have this invite that he sent out for a Christian prayer and worship service. And he sent this out in an official capacity. And this apparently is this a violation of the Constitution? I know you had, in your book, paralleled the Bible in our interpretation and adherence to the Bible and the Constitution. Who's winning out here? Are we on our way to Christo-fascist biblical replacement instead of the Constitution? What's happening here?
No, I hope not. I mean, I'm very wary of predicting the future, but I certainly hope not, and I'll do everything I can. I do think that most of the founders hated the idea of an official state religion, and even back then, George Washington talked about the Catholics. He talked about the Jews, and now, of course, it's much more of a variety. You've got dozens of religion in America, and so the idea of one official religion is, to me, just a terrible idea, and it goes against everything that this country is supposed to be.
Yeah, and my nervousness, obviously, as a Black woman in America, is about being written out of it entirely. Can you talk about the set of amendments that kind of led to what is not the actual founding of America, but the set of amendments that made everything a little bit more equal? Because it seems like, to me, that's when, a little bit after, that's the part that Republicans have a hard time with. When they say make America great again, they want to go back to the time before those amendments.
Well, I talked to several constitutional scholars who said the post-Civil War amendments, and especially the 14th Amendment, that was almost a second founding. That was huge, because it said that there was due process for everyone, that it wasn't just about an elitist group. They abolished slavery. And what's interesting is there is a movement in constitutional interpretation called originalism, where they want to go back to what was, quote, the original meaning. Now, what's interesting is the 14th Amendment, that was meant to give rights to Black men after the Civil War who were being harassed and oppressed by white Southerners. Now, because most people think you have to evolve the Constitution, when they talked about due process, back then it meant Black men. But most people, I believe, think, well, now that doesn't just apply to Black men, it applies to Black women, it applies to gay people. It is due process for everyone. But if you are a true originalist, like Clarence Thomas says he is, then the 14th Amendment does not apply to gender. It doesn't. It only applies to the original meaning, which was giving Black men protection after the Civil War. I think that's a terrible approach. I think there has to be some flexibility so that everyone is given rights. But again, it's a very tricky situation because you don't want to evolve it in a totally different direction like the Trump administration is doing. So you have to stick to the spirit of the Constitution and this idea of checks and balances and a spirit of equality, as opposed to staying rigid and stuck in the past, which is one problem, or just deciding, well, the Constitution says whatever we want it to say, and we want it to be that the president has unlimited power.
So it feels like people are paying way more attention to the Constitution in the last few weeks. It feels like now the average American needs to sit down and read the Constitution just to be able to follow what is happening. So going forward, I want to talk optimism. I want to talk about what we can do, because you finished this book prior to the second Trump presidency.
Right, exactly.
How are you maintaining optimism now that we're here where we are right now? Great
question. It's a struggle. It is a struggle. One thing is to look at the long view. And this is a very dark period, I believe, but we have had dark periods before. We've had the Civil War. The Revolutionary War itself was, the fact that we took on the world's biggest military and won, that is like a long shot. That is crazy. That is like, I don't know, like a community college beating Duke in the Final Four. It just is amazing. So there's some sense of optimism. If you look at the long view, I do think America has gotten better. We have seen, I think we've backslid in the last few years, but I think, let's take the long view. There have been advances and progress for all sorts of marginalized groups. So I guess that's one way. And also fake it till you make it. Let's bake those cakes and let's go out there and celebrate democracy until we make it so that democracy actually is a reality again.
I love the fake it till you make it, because that's part of what I call strategic optimism, which is basically like, I know everything's terrible out there, but if I focus on the terrible, it's going to make it that much more difficult for me to do the work I need to do. So I'm going to be strategically optimistic until the conditions change. We can always latch on to that part of attitude makes a huge difference. I want to talk about community, because that's the buzzword right now of how we're going to get out of it. At least one thing is that we need to come together. America used to be more communal. Can you talk about those years in the 1700s, people had to come together? Why aren't we doing that now? And I just saw the documentary. I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix, the one about the bowling alone guy. And so community, how do we come together again to remember?
Great question.
Each other?
And I do think that there was more of a civic responsibility back then. Again, very constrained to a particular sector of the society, but there was this sense of civic duty. Like you would even be part of a militia. That was you had to give up your weekends to protect your country. There was the bucket brigade. So if there was a fire, you were out there fighting the fire for your community. So it was much less individualistic. I am a big fan of individual rights, but I think they need to be balanced by responsibility. And I wish that the founders had created a bill of responsibilities in addition to a bill of rights. So maybe that's one solution. I think it's a great question how we do it. I mean, one solution is, I actually thought that when COVID came, I'm like, okay, now we have a common enemy. But that didn't work. But there's still hope, I think. Maybe there's an alien invasion. That's one option. There's, I mean, if we can conceive something like climate change as a common enemy that we have to fight, if we just acknowledge its existence, that maybe that's a solution. I know it's a long shot because some people don't acknowledge it's a problem, but finding a common, some sort of common battle to fight, I think, is one way to cement community. So whatever that battle is, let's find it and let's do it.
Well, I was going to say, you are into puzzles. You have a puzzle podcast as well. And, during the pandemic, puzzles brought people together.
There you go.
Yeah. So I'm thinking we need more. We need communal. What do we need? Puzzles, pub quizzes.
Yes, we need a nationwide jigsaw puzzle.
Yes.
I love that idea. And I will say really quickly, one way that I have engaged in politics is to adopt the puzzle mindset. So if I am speaking to someone who disagrees with me, who's on the, who's part of the MAGA wing, then instead of trying to see it as a battle, I'm not going to have a conversation that is just, I am going into battle. Instead, I try to envision it as a puzzle. Why do they believe what they believe? Why do I believe what I believe? What evidence can I produce that might sway them? What evidence might they produce? Oh, sorry.
It's such a good idea that someone's calling you to say yes.
That's exactly right.
If we can solve the puzzle together, if we look at democracy as a puzzle, right?
That's right.
Our Constitution, our founding documents, our principles are all in flux to be solved together. So
I love that, Maya.
We're in an escape room with a puzzle, with cake. And if we we don't get cake until we figure out the puzzle. That's what it is. That's what we're doing. All right.
America as an escape room. Perfect.
AJ, I'm so glad that you could come on Punching Up. This is kind of the optimism and boost that I need. I kind of need this every day.
Look, I'd love to talk every day. Let's hang out.
Awesome. We can solve it together. I will. We'll have you back on for sure if you still have the Constitution to talk about. Maybe it'll be the year of living without the Constitution.
There you go. Let's hope not. Let's fight to keep it. Let's fight to keep it.
I'm definitely down for that. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Maya. Thank you for all you're doing. And it's been a joy to be on the show and talk about solutions. And that they are out there. We just have to figure them out.
And we can't give up.
Nope.
That's the main thing. All right, guys. I am all for, I'm wearing the flag sweater. This is my daughter's, actually. And we have to come to solutions together. I love AJ's idea of approaching it as a puzzle, approaching these conversations, because I am perpetually online and it is hard to resist the urge to argue with people that we disagree with. But the fact of the matter is, united we stand, divided we fall. We're all in this together. And so if in these conversations we can approach it as a puzzle, then maybe, just maybe, we can get out of this intact, and then we get to have cake. So thank you for joining me for another Punching Up. Remember, it's at a new time now, 5 p.m. Eastern, and I will see you next week. Oh, check out Rick talks to God. Oh, I want to know about this one. That sounds fun. Check out Rick's. I don't know if it's Rick's new show or if it's just a live, but it looks like it's going to be fun. So check it out.